Tony Clevenger. I'm a research scientist at the Western Transportation Institute at Montana State University. We've been monitoring the wildlife crossings and highway mitigation measures here in Banff National Park since November 1996. We're collecting video footage of the animals' response to the hair sampling system. This isn't a technique that we use at all the wildlife crossings. Because it's a pilot study, we want to be able to determine what their behavior is when they come towards the hair sampling system and how they get through the hair sampling system, how they're leaving hair or if they're not leaving hair. So eventually we can develop the best technique for sampling hair at these wildlife crossings. By sampling hair or DNA of these individuals that use these wildlife crossings, we can determine who these individuals are, we can determine their sex, how they're related to other individuals in the population, and it ultimately gives us information about really the gene flow, who's using these structures for connecting these subpopulations that are divided by the highway. Connectivity is linking populations that are subdivided by any type of linear infrastructure, such as a transportation corridor or a busy highway. How much connectivity is enough is a good question, and we scientifically don't have enough information at the moment to determine what levels of connectivity are important for maintaining these viable populations. With the DNA profiling at these underpasses, this can provide us with the basic parameters for planning and designing wildlife crossings and mitigation measures on the Phase 3B section of the Trans-Canada Highway out at Lake Louise. We've learned many things from our research results is that human activity is an important factor in determining the effectiveness of these structures, that is, whether or not wildlife will use them and how frequently they'll use them. The more human use we have of these structures, the less all wildlife we're using them. That is not just elk and deer, but also large carnivores such as grizzly bears and wolves. We've also found that species prefer different structures. Grizzly bears, wolves, elk and deer prefer large structures such as overpasses or large open-span bridge underpasses. We found that cougars and black bears prefer the exact opposite. They prefer these small, narrow, constricted structures with not a lot of light. And we believe that that's really a result of what these species need on the landscape in terms of their habitat requirements and their behaviors. This is a 50-meter wide overpass. It's the largest on the existing mitigated stretch of highway on Phase 3B. We've recommended that the structures be 60 meters wide at the center with 90-meter wide approach ramps, and also the primary underpass structures be the same width, 60 meters wide. The secondary structures will be about 25 meters wide, and the tertiary structures will be the size of the existing wildlife underpasses on Phase 1, which is about 14 meters wide.
The current project has issues different than what we dealt with in the first phases of the project. Of course, wildlife is still a high-profile issue, but the species are different. In Phase 3B, as we approach Lake Louise, we're working in the lower subalpine, which is a far more prevalent environment, but also we have unique species such as grizzly bears.
I'm Steve Herrera, and I'm a biologist with a specific interest in conservation. The current situation for grizzly bears in Alberta is not black and white. There's some evidence that suggests that they may be a threatened species, and so we have to be very careful with how many are killed, because we also know that they have a very low reproductive rate. Just about everyone who's worked with grizzly bears, including the provincial biologists, agree that there's probably fewer than 1,000 grizzly bears in the province.
Okay, so it's a spring bear and a young male, so we've left a lot of room, but yet it's difficult for him to get it over, but he still could, but I'm not going to go any tighter just because he's a young male, 195 pounds, he's got a lot of room to grow this fall.
My name is Mike Jabot. I'm the carnivore specialist for the Mountain National Parks. In Lake Louise, grizzly bears factor largely into the landscape here. This is one of the places where we have a reasonably high concentration of grizzly bears. They interact with people the most here, more than most other places in national parks, because this is a place where there are lots of people as well. So there tends to be lots of conflicts. More grizzly bears die here in the Lake Louise area than any other place in the Mountain National Parks. Well, there's a number of factors that come together here. The topography, first off, is a confluence of several different valleys. There's lots of good food sources here, And then, of course, there's all the attractions of town for grizzly bears to come and investigate. So the combination of those three things end up with grizzly bears interacting around the town site of Lake Louise quite a bit.
Well, my name is Hal Morrison, and I'm the Wildlife-Human Conflict Specialist for the Lake Louise, Yoho, and Kootenai Field Unit.
We want to give them a rough time. We're going to yell, "Hey bear, hey bear." We're going to whack them with some bean bags close and rubber bullets long. But as soon as he gets into them trees and basically out of sight, so only 20 feet into those trees, then we shut everything off. If we give him anything to orient on, when he comes out, he can spin around and come right back.
The way we beat him up is with rubber bullets and noisemakers and all that. Make it an unpleasant experience. And then we follow him around. Every time he came back into town, we kind of tried to reinforce it, like train your dog.
In and around the Lake Louise area in the last 5 years, there's been 3 grizzly bears killed on the highways, 2 females and 1 male. That's a significant amount of bears to lose out of a total estimated population of 60 bears in Banff National Park. So right here is one of the favorite areas that we've seen for grizzly bears and black bears crossing just to the east of Lake Louise. There's a fair amount of cover right up to the road edges here, so they are able to come up to the road edge and take a look around. The more experienced bears are looking for a gap in the traffic. Some of the less experienced bears just make a wild dash and hope that there's nothing coming. If you play that game of Russian roulette long enough, even the experienced bears usually end up getting hit. When the road is twinned with fencing, and there's a crossing structure somewhere in this particular stretch, it'll definitely reduce the amount of mortality. Right in this residential area here corresponds with the area where some of the bears are crossing the Trans-Canada Highway. And what we see now is the bears are coming through the residential area, through the edge of the campground. Now, if the twinning fencing runs around the back of the community, the bears will fetch up against the fence before they get into the community. They'll rebound back into a non-developed area and be able to follow the fence line along to a perforation where they're able to make a decision as to whether or not they're going to cross at a crossing structure. In the section that's already twinned and fenced, the wildlife mortality has dropped off drastically. The challenge, of course, is to make sure that the animals can still effectively cross to seek whatever life requisites they need on the other side of the highway.